Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, I am DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, that list includes the Stanley Parable, Ultra Deluxe, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Ooh. I played the Stanley Parable.
Did you?
For about
I did not play Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Well, what's
Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
No, it's Star Wars Jedi, from what I'm led to believe.
Period. Closed parentheses.
Period. Yeah. When was the last time we had a game with parentheses in the title? Oh man, that doesn't work. We just had one last week. What am I saying?
Week, yeah. Yep.
What? Wow, this is not off to a good start.
A monster's expedition parentheses through puzzling exhibitions.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not totally sure what's going on with that, but I feel like there's a lot more room for creative punctuation in video game titles. Like, enough with the subtitles. Do something weird, like put a semicolon in there, put some parentheses, so that the monster's expedition's, going down the right path.
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, we're back here with 2 colons and 2 subtitles this week.
We've used up all of our punctuation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, what can you do?
Well, in light of your game selection for this week, DJ, and I know that you love sort of random bullshit holidays, happy Star Wars Day to you.
No.
May the Fourth be with you.
Oh my God. I did this on purpose. I did it on purpose. I wish I could say that. That's actually incredible.
Excellent.
Happy Star Wars Day, everyone.
Hey. And I'm playing Stanley Parable because of Cinco de Mayo, so...
Oh, incredible. Incredible.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
They say it's like you couldn't have planned it better.
You did not plan it that way, I presume. It doesn't sound like something
Star Wars Day is the Wednesday. No, we got it all messed up.
Yeah. Yeah, May 4th. So the Star Wars Day will have come and gone by the time this episode sees the light of day. But
okay, good. Okay, so still just business as usual. Just absurd coincidences, nothing on purpose. It's fine.
I hope you celebrated appropriately.
But so it's Star Wars Day or Cinco de Mayo?
Star Wars Day.
I don't, what do you do for a Star Wars Day? You like dress up, like swing your lightsaber around, or what? Yeah,
you watch a good Star Wars movie, and then you have 22 more hours to do whatever you want.
I feel like 22 is a little long.
A little generous, yeah.
I feel like
we're going to get letters.
You got at least 20, I feel like. It's been a long time since I saw any, like, those first 3. Maybe it's time. Maybe I'm celebrating this year.
Time for a rewatch?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what led you in the direction of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order? This is not a new game, right?
It's not. No, it came out in, I believe, 2018, 2019. Okay. I don't know. I just felt like it was time to play this. It's always been kind of on my radar. There's been some buzz about the sequel, which I think I also discovered completely by coincidence as I was like downloading this. I ran into some article where they were talking about what's going on in the sequel. And I thought, oh, I should play that at some point. In fact, I'm just preparing to play it at this very moment. So... just, again, incredible, completely unintentional timing.
Excellent.
But I don't know. Should we get right into it? Should we just start talking about Star Wars? Should we continue talking about Star Wars?
I guess we're doing this. I don't know that I can hang, but I will try.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not like a huge Star Wars head, so whatever.
I played a Star Wars game once.
Oh, yeah? Which one?
You were Darth Vader.
Wait. Let me guess. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Did I ruin it? Sorry.
No, I wouldn't have thought of that one anyway. That was
Darth Vader doing Force things. I think it was called The Force. Wasn't that game called The Force Awakens?
The Force Unleashed.
The Force Unleashed.
Yeah, you gotta clarify what the Force is doing.
Star Wars: The Force: Unleashed.
Yeah, it's like, is this the one where it's unleashed, or is it the one where it's merely awakened?
Is this the Tomb Raider begins, or is this the Dark Knight continues? Or the Rises, confused. Yeah, or something. Yeah. Who knows? I played that one. It was fun. There was an era where there were a bunch of video games like Second Sight and Time Splitters, where you had cool like telekinesis moves and things like that. And I felt like this was sort of an extension of that. It felt like, you could put your hand up and make spaceships crash into each other and stuff. It was very exciting.
Sure. I thought that game was always billed as get to fully experience force powers. Just go nuts on all these stormtroopers with your force powers. I was like, that sounds great, because that doesn't really happen in the movies. And then I played it, and it was always why am I always out of force power? How many power-ups do I need to pick up to restore my force gauge or whatever?
Yeah.
This is very unsatisfying. But anyway.
It is a video game, after all.
It is, yeah. It feels like one of those things that is just tough to make a video game about. They've never really made a good Superman video game, because how could you do that? Because he's just, in theory, he's just unbeatable, right?
Right. You have to sort of manufacture some video game conceit where Superman is stripped of his powers for some reason, and you have to sort of get them all back or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And nobody wants to play the Clark Kent investigative journalism video game.
Right.
Or maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Maybe that would be
That
fun.
actually sounds like it could have some potential. But anyway, back to Star Wars. So I don't know why I'm playing this. It just felt like the time.
Is this a well-regarded Star Wars game? Is this a Star Wars game that people like?
It's pretty well-regarded, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a good reason to play it.
Yeah. That's probably why I had interested in it in the first place. It's by Respawn, which is interesting. The Modern Warfare 2 / Titanfall / Apex Legends guys, which is...
Oh, interesting.
Kind of a weird studio to suddenly put out a Star Wars game, but sure, they're generally their stuff is extremely good, so why not? Yeah,
probably paid well. It probably sort of more than made up for Titanfall 2 not selling a ton of copies.
Yeah, too bad about that. Yeah, I'm sure they're all living on their Apex Legends yachts at this point, so I think it worked out for them. I hope Apex Legends worked out for them, actually.
Yeah, it seems to. I'm not really sure. It's kind of ubiquitous, right? It's a little bit everywhere, and they keep adding seasons to it. So,
yeah. But anyway, Jedi Fallen Order. This takes place after the prequel movies, where, spoiler alert, they just issued this order to exterminate all the remaining Jedi, so the evil Galactic Empire can rise up and control the galaxy. And you play as one of the sort of last remaining Jedi who has gone into hiding, and he's been working on this scrapyard planet for the last few years, just staying undercover, undetected. Then suddenly a bunch of stuff goes awry, and he is discovered and on the run from the Empire again. And along the course of the opening hours of this game, he discovers that he has sort of the opportunity to reestablish the Jedi Order. And you spend the rest of the game, or at least the part that I played, sort of traveling to different planets around the galaxy, digging up clues and audio logs, basically, in pursuit of this. So you're just trying to find the Jedi MacGuffin, essentially, that will allow you to accomplish this. So that's the premise. As for the actual game, you go about reestablishing the Jedi Order by doing a lot of lightsaber fighting and wall running, basically. Just in case you forgot it was a Respawn game.
Right, there's the Respawn touch right there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hilarious actually, because on one hand I'm I suppose Jedi maybe they do end up wall running a lot. but then it's like, oh, it's a Respawn game. Well, then definitely they're going to be doing some wall running in this. I just think it's kind of funny.
They might even have a mech at some point.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, there have been quite a few mechs at this point.
There you go.
So, well, I guess it really isn't as surprising as I expected as for Respawn to be doing this. It really just fits right into their sort of MO. But anyway, it's basically Star Wars Uncharted. So I'm kind of surprised that you haven't played this.
Oh. Well, no one's pitched it to me in quite that manner before.
Oh, really? Okay. So it's a weird mix. It's like a lot of Uncharted because you, like I said, in addition to the wall running, you are doing sort of like very Uncharted or Tomb Raider-esque platforming, like swinging from vines and doing the just the signature. I don't even know what you call it. Like whenever Nathan Drake sort of jumps up and grabs a ledge, but then he has to like shimmy along a wall holding onto this ledge. It's just like he does the exact same. It's like the Nathan Drake posture. Whenever this comes up in the game, I'm just like, oh, okay, this is just Nathan Drake with a lightsaber.
This feels familiar. Yeah.
And then there's the combat, which feels like it's trying to be a little bit Dark Souls in that, you've got this sword, you got your lightsaber, and a lot of the combat ends up being against not just like kind of the fodder stormtroopers, but like a slightly more capable variety of stormtrooper where they've got some kind of like pole arm or just not a lightsaber, but some other kind of sword or like a club or something that allows them to fight you even though you've got a lightsaber. So you end up doing a lot of like dodging and parrying, which feels very Dark Souls inspired to me. So it's this weird mix. It's not quite a full... They didn't go fully Uncharted. It's not fully Dark Souls. It's somewhere in the middle.
You never go full Uncharted.
Right. But it's also just like trying to be a Star Wars story. So that's very entertaining. In fact, I think the lightsaber combat and like that's fine. And the platforming is like whatever. I'm not playing this for the platforming. But it's actually a pretty interesting Star Wars story because it's like a sort of a mystery in the center of it. It's, I mean, in that sense, it's also like Uncharted because you're just going to all these very exotic locations and like jumping around all these ruins and opening old sarcophagi or whatever, trying to find clues.
Man, yeah, this sounds like my thing, man.
Yeah. So I'm just like, oh, this is a lot like those other games. It's kind of fun.
Is this, I guess I didn't follow it, but I know Amy Hennig, who was sort of the lead writer, I guess, on the first couple of Uncharted games, left Naughty Dog to go make a Star Wars game.
Mm-hmm. No, this is not that game.
This is not that game, okay.
Yeah, that game got canceled, didn't it?
Oh, okay. I thought maybe I had heard that, but I wasn't sure. After everything you were saying, I was like, well, maybe this is the thing.
Yeah, I mean, now that you put it that way, it does seem like, oh, I wonder if this borrowed any from that project or what the deal was. Because I think that was with, well, this is also with EA. So I'm not totally sure what's going on.
Okay.
But anyway, it's this interesting mix of things. And, I can get more into detail about all those parts later on. But for the most part, it's just like a fun Star Wars experience. And like I said, I'm not a huge Star Wars head, but I always am kind of like in the corner rooting for Star Wars to just be better than it has been over the last like several decades. Because like I know there's all sorts of cool Star Wars TV shows and stuff, but I'm like based primarily around the movies. I'm just like, oh, why are these better? Like you've got people with these lightsabers, you've got all these crazy aliens and spaceships. It just seems like every movie should just be a slam dunk, just 2 hours of unfiltered adventure and spectacle. And instead we get, I don't know what's going on, like what happened with the last few movies. But this starts off really strongly, I think, because you're on the scrapyard planet, and you're just playing as this guy who is like, for a Jedi, he's pretty unremarkable. But the setting is incredible. Like in the background, they're just dismantling these enormous starships, and it's just like I found myself stopping every few seconds during the tutorial section of this just to sort of see what was going on. It was like, this is amazing. And then things go down. the lightsabers come out, and like the sort of main villain shows up, who is not quite Darth Vader, but yeah, the villain design or the character design in this game is so good. It's just like sort of a different take on Darth Vader as like the main villain you face off against in this game. This is the second sister, who is like kind of this like really scary looking sort of assassin version of Darth Vader. She's like finds you on this scrapyard planet and then just starts pursuing you through the rest of the game. But I'm just like, yeah, for some reason this is just working so much better for me than like the last few attempts at a Star Wars movie. So I'm very pleased with that.
Cool. Does it require like an encyclopedic knowledge of all things Star Wars to be able to sort of appreciate and glean fun from it?
I don't think so. I mean, you kind of like, there's a huge codex that sort of populates as you play, so you can like look stuff up, I imagine, if you're unfamiliar with stuff. But basically, like, as long as you know the premise, like the Jedi are on the run, you can kind of fill in the blanks as you go along. And, you know, like, it kind of assumes you have a basic sort of working knowledge of things in Star Wars, like who the Jedi are and what they're capable of and like what the Force is. You don't need to know really precise details or anything, but you know.
There's no quiz or anything. Yeah.
No, I feel like you would be fine playing this.
Okay, cool.
Certainly if you're a Star Wars fan, there will be tons and tons of references that you'll pick up on that you will probably appreciate. But like I said, not a huge fan, but so a lot of the stuff is probably going over my head, but I'll recognize stuff every once in a while. Like I just went to the Wookiee planet. I was like, oh yeah, Wookiees.
I get that reference.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just a lot of good like Star Wars window dressing. It's just fun. It's just a fun adventure game.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, geez, I'm looking at little screenshots and stuff now, and it's like $12. There might be a way that I would play this.
Yeah, I think you could, afford to give it a shot. Like, it's a cool story. The gameplay is actually pretty satisfying. Actually, well, it goes up and down for me. Like, the combat is pretty fun, although I found that I feel like because it seems like they're trying to bring some of Dark Souls into this, the combat is like trying to be really technical, but either it's just like not really working for me or I'm just not good at it. So in a lot of these sort of like melee encounters, things can go south real fast. So I don't really know what's going on.
How do they handle the lightsaber fighting? Because I was sort of flashing back to Uncharted. One of them ended with a sword fight, and it wasn't great. It was basically
it was like
button prompt city. Yeah, exactly. So how do they address it in Star Wars? Presuming it's a much bigger part of that game.
Well, the lightsaber fighting is fine. Like mechanically, it's pretty good. He kind of controls the way you would expect, just like watching lightsaber combat in one of the movies. He's like pretty agile. He swings his sword all over the place. There are various, like you have a block move, and then sort of Dark Souls style, you have a parry move. So if you time your block correctly, you will deflect their attack and like stun the enemy. That's something that kind of throws me a little bit because I feel like in Dark Souls, whenever you parry somebody, it like really stuns them, and a lot of the time you can just do a fatal counterattack immediately. But in this, sometimes I'll do a parry, and it's more like the enemy will just flinch for a second and then go right on back to attacking me, which brings up brings up some of the issues I have with this, which are like, I don't know how valid these are. It's something I find amusing about playing a game with a lightsaber, because okay, so you're a stormtrooper and you're dueling some guy. He's got a lightsaber and you've more or less just got a metal rod. And so you take a swing at him. He blocks it with a lightsaber. Like, what's the difference between like blocking something and just getting hit with a lightsaber? Like, that thing is going through whatever he's swinging it at, right?
Right. Yeah. That would be my sort of mental image of how that's supposed to work. It would just, like, the lightsaber would cut through the metal rod, would it not?
Right. So, I mean, it's a little silly. You have to just sort of suspend your disbelief.
Yeah. You would think that there'd be a Bible for these, but, like, Star Wars fans probably are looking for some degree of consistency here, right? So
I'm sure there's an in-universe explanation. They have these specially built tools for fighting lightsabers, so it's all explained scientifically, but it just looks silly. Well, okay, so that's one thing, though. So the Stormtrooper is fine. They've got whatever anti-lightsaber technology they've got, sure. But as you're making your way around these planets, there's just indigenous wildlife, like these big lizard dog things that'll pop out of the ground and attack you, and they will just take swings at you, and then you just block their limbs with a lightsaber. I'm like, how does that work? How the limb is still firmly attached there? It just looks kind of silly. But it's fine. Like I said, it would be like making a Superman game. It just wouldn't be any fun if it was completely powers accurate or whatever.
Yeah.
So
until
the combat's
Batman
fine.
came along and fought you.
Yeah, right. And then Batman has got his kryptonite suit or whatever. But anyway, so the combat's fine. It's fun to just slice stuff up as a Jedi. What I really like about it is that, so you spend a lot of time fighting these elite stormtroopers, but in the background there's always just, the plain old stormtroopers who are taking pot shots at you with their blasters. And the game gives you a couple options in terms of how to deal with this. Is that you can either just hold down the guard button, and he'll do the little lightsaber twirl around, which just deflects their shots harmlessly. Or if you time it correctly, you can basically parry one of their shots so it sends it right back at them and usually kills them, which is amazing. Because, I mean, not only is it's just like really satisfying to do, and it's fairly easy to do as well, which is nice. But my favorite thing is I end up doing it a lot, but just purely by accident. So I will be facing off against one of the more elite troopers, and like guys will be in the background behind him shooting at me, and in my attempts to just like parry whatever the main trooper is doing, I will just send these blaster bolts back at them, so they're just accidentally shooting themselves all over the place. I'm like barely even paying attention to them. Sometimes they will deflect one and it'll like kill the elite guy who I'm fighting, which I imagine just like, dude, you just shot your boss. That's not going to look good. So just
it's going to come up on your performance review.
Yeah, just endless source of amusement. I wonder if the actual Jedi were just loving it the whole time. Just like, oh, look at these guys. So anyway, the combat, sometimes a little sketchy, sometimes not the greatest, but just somehow incredibly entertaining.
Do you get cool force powers and stuff like that, or is it all sort of fighting?
You do. Okay. And actually, I think my enjoyment of the game just increased exponentially once I got these, because you start out and you don't really have them for some reason. Like, he's disconnected himself from the force for, I don't know why. But fairly quickly, you unlock like a force freeze, which just kind of stops somebody in their tracks and they can't move. But then you get the classics, force pull and force push, which you can imagine are just tons of fun, because you can send stormtroopers off ledges, you can sort of pull one towards you, and then I don't know what you do at that point. Honestly, I use the push way more often just because it's hysterical. But it just adds that sort of just extra dimension to the fighting, which is really good. It feels a little bit like Breath of the Wild, actually, because you also use these outside of combat, because there are a lot of like environmental puzzles.
Oh, cool.
So sometimes you have to freeze something, like a fast-moving fan blades you can zip through, or you'll like push a huge sphere into a conveniently placed receptacle to solve some ancient tomb puzzle. You know how it is in these ancient tombs.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yep. You're speaking my language, DJ. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. That's funny. Yeah, I sort of, when you were talking about sort of parrying the lasers back at them, I thought of using the shield to parry the Guardian laser back at the Guardians. Yeah.
Except you can do it every single time, so it's much better.
Yeah, I'm terrible at it in Breath of the Wild. So
also the stakes are much lower, so maybe that helps. But anyway, it's fun to just be able to do Jedi stuff, and like I was saying, my issues with that Force Awakens game is they were like, finally, you can be a full-powered, cool Jedi, and then that wasn't really my experience playing that game. But in this one, you start out kind of, underpowered. You don't really have your Force tools yet. But eventually, you're just, tossing stormtroopers off ledges, you're freezing stuff and, stabbing them with your lightsaber. It's real good.
Well, cool. Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I don't know what else I have to say about it. Oh. I think my biggest sort of disappointment in playing this is that as you're going through it, all these tombs, essentially, which are enormous, by the way. I was really surprised. It's kind of took me off guard. You unlock all these weird customization options for like the poncho this guy is wearing, and then his little droid buddy you can repaint, and I think you can even repaint your ship. But the thing I really want, I think the thing that anybody really wants, they're playing a Star Wars game where you have a lightsaber, is just, when do I get to change the color of my lightsaber? And starting out, you have a few options. It can either be like blue or green because you're a Jedi. But I was like, no, I want the Samuel L. Jackson purple lightsaber. When do I get that? And so I had to look it up because I was like, I don't want to miss this in a chest somewhere if that's how it ends up happening.
Yeah.
And it turns out, no spoilers, but it sounds like you have to finish the entire game in order to unlock colors beyond just the blue and green. I'm like,
what?
What's the deal with that? That's a little disappointing. Like, what am I going to use a lightsaber for after I finish the whole game? I don't know.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it has really no impact on the quality of the game. But just kind of a weird, questionable decision. I don't know if there's a whole lot, like, if there's incentive to go back and replay everything.
Oh, and then use that purple lightsaber.
Yeah, for like New Game Plus or whatever.
Right.
I was going to say it's slightly... There's some Metroidvania aspects to it because you keep unlocking these different powers. Like, in addition to the Force stuff, your droid has different capabilities, so he can like start hacking terminals and things like that, which unlock different areas of the maps you've been to already. So, like, maybe if you just want to go back and do a completionist playthrough, you can do that and pull out that purple lightsaber. It'd be great. But I was a little disappointed when I found out that I'm going to be stuck with the blue and green for the rest of the game.
I mean, just give the people what they want, man.
Yeah, just give them what they want. I mean, surely there are other people out there who are just tired of the blue and green lightsabers.
Is lightsaber color determined by your faction? If you're a good guy or a bad guy, is that part of it?
Well, based on my expansive understanding of Star Wars lore, if you're a bad guy, you have a red one. If you're a good guy, you can have basically any other color. I'm not really sure what sort of determines what color you end up with. But I also read, so they just never let you have a red one, even if you finish the game, because I don't know why.
Because you're not a bad guy.
Because you're not a bad guy. They couldn't just let you have a red one, like say you picked it up off somebody? I don't know. Feels like a just weird thing to arbitrarily lock out people from having.
Well, again, that's that Star Wars Bible. I imagine there's somebody who's
I'm sure
monitoring these things very closely to make sure it all sort of fits under the roof of the Star Wars lore.
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably what happened to Amy Hennig. She was like, let's give this guy a red lightsaber. And then somebody at Disney, or I don't know if they were owned by Disney at that point. George Lucas got wind of it. He's like, no, shut that whole thing down.
A red lightsaber and a half tuck.
But anyway, so having a surprisingly good time with this, despite not being out of a purple lightsaber. But what can you do?
If you just play with the color settings on your TV, you might be able to get there.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a workaround, DJ.
I won't even be able to tell.
Yeah. I'm intrigued. I got to tell you, I every now and then something sort of sneaks onto my radar where I'm like, it's not a thing that I would normally play, but it seems to push enough buttons that I would probably have fun with it. And this sounds like one of those things.
I think you'd be into it. Yeah. You can also just like, if the Dark Souls style combat puts up a red flag, you can turn that off. Basically, you can put on story difficulty, which I will admit to toggling a couple times because I feel like, I do enjoy the combat when it's against a boss, especially like sometimes the second sister shows up and you have a little lightsaber duel and that's exciting. But if I'm just wandering around a cave and these lizard things are popping out, like that should be no issue for some Jedi. I don't want to keep getting humbled by these weird like lizard dog things. So when I'm doing exploration segments, I will typically turn the story difficulty mode on and then bump it back up whenever a boss shows up.
It sounds a bit like the combat in the Batman games, the Arkham games. Is that?
It is a little bit. In fact, I had that thought. I was like, well, maybe this isn't Dark Souls. Maybe this is like Assassin's Creed or something, and I've got the parry system misunderstood in my head.
Yeah. Because that's generally, again, if executed properly, is always very satisfying in the Batman games.
Yeah, but I mean, in those games, it was also you counter them, and then it's just an instant kill on them, right? It's not like they just blink for a second and then continue stabbing you.
Right, yeah, you get a big opening to kind of jump in.
Yeah. I was just getting frustrated. There's so many fights I would run into, and I was like, oh, right, yeah, I'm a cool Jedi Master, and then just get wailed on by some stormtrooper with a baseball bat.
Yeah, that's very humbling.
Yeah, it's just like weird to see on the screen. It was like, oh man, this is the worst Jedi I've ever seen. Anyway.
Oh, cool.
Star Wars, Jedi Fallen Order, whatever they're calling this. Really confusing title. I wonder if it's like, the title seems like it's Star Wars Jedi, Fallen Order. So I don't know if Star Wars Jedi is meant to be like its own thing. If maybe I missed previous Star Wars Jedi installments. I don't know if this is the first one that like kicks off this Fallen Order series. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I'm again, Sam, I'm over my head here. I can't hang on that one. So, yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So, in a sort of a weird turnabout, and in no way related to Star Wars, I've been playing the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. The Stanley Parable : Ultra Deluxe.
There we go.
Yeah.
I've only played the regular edition of this. There wasn't even a deluxe version. They just went straight from the Stanley Parable to Ultra Deluxe.
Yeah, skipped right to it. Like over the course of 7 years, 8 years, right?
Yeah.
More, almost 10 years.
I was looking at my save right before we started recording, as a matter of fact, and the date on it was 2013. So
yeah, so the original version of this came out in October 2013. The reason DJ and I are so intricately sort of aware of when the last time we played it was, or when it came out, is because it has sort of infamously an achievement in it that requires you to not play the Stanley Parable for 5 years.
Yes.
And then to come back to the game, and then it unlocks an achievement.
Which is called Go Outside, which is very good. One of the best achievements of all time.
Yeah. The new version of the game has a new version of that achievement called Ultra Go Outside. And it's 10 years that you have to not play Stanley Parable.
Yeah. Well, the new version.
Correct. In the new one, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if they retroed that back into the old one, but.
Oh, no, the old one is still 5 years.
It's still just 5 years? Okay.
Yeah, so don't worry.
So the hook here with Stanley Parable, obviously this is a new version that has recently come out for a game that was previously released, obviously. The hook here is that you are a bit of a drone office worker named Stanley, employee number 427, for this sort of non-specific, nondescript sort of general kind of office building. You kind of have a mindless job where information comes to you on a terminal and you type that information back into your terminal, and that's your thing all day, all of your life for the rest of your days until you die.
Right.
Or until at some point, no information comes in across your terminal. And after an hour of staring and waiting for more work to be done, you get up and start walking around your office and you realize that all of your coworkers are gone. So you go on a bit of a journey to try to sort of find them somewhere in the office building to find out what happened. Perhaps you missed a memo, the narrator says. And then sort of insane things start to happen to Stanley.
I'm glad you gave the little plot recap, because it's been a long time since I played this. And my memory of this game is that like just weird things happen. Just like weird sort of meta things. I don't know how you would even describe it. It's a very sort of like self-aware game, but I forgot they attempted to just like have an actual basis for what is happening to Stanley in this.
Right. Yeah. So there's a narrator in this, and the narrator's great. He's very verbose. He's, quite the storyteller. And he informs sort of a lot of the things that you do as a player, sort of working through Stanley. You have control over Stanley. You don't have control over the narrator. You get a bit of an exposition at the beginning, and you realize that your coworkers, the office is empty and nobody's there. So Stanley gets up and walks away from his desk. And then it just sort of hangs. And you don't do until you, as the player, do something. pick up your controller, move Stanley around, walk out of his office. And then the narrator sort of continues. And he's sort of gently sort of influencing you into decisions until at some point you as a player realize that you don't have to do what he says. And you can start doing kind of your own things. You can start sort of exploring. You can take detours. And sometimes the narrator sort of, gently kind of tolerates these things. And then sometimes he gets quite angry and menacing about it. You start to realize there's way more to sort of Stanley's humdrum, kind of monotonous life, and way more to this sort of mysterious and again, slightly menacing company that he works for. Yes, but to your point, EJ, it does get kind of meta. I remember an original version of this game that sort of came out 10 years ago. There was one of many potential endings, and I guess block your ears if you're sort of sensitive to spoilers here, but I don't know if this has made it into the new version where you like go through a door and you're in Minecraft.
Oh, I don't know if I did that in the first one.
You didn't know if you did that? So there's a possible Minecraft ending buried somewhere in the original Stanley Parable.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite things about the original is that, it started out with the appearance that this was going to be a fairly straightforward sort of like walking simulator, I suppose. But it immediately just starts playing with all your expectations in terms of like how you think the story is going to develop, what you are supposed to be able to do in a video game, like what the structure of a video game is supposed to be. Just weird things like that aren't just necessarily like strictly story-based twists.
Right, yeah. Some of them are these kind of winky, kind of, gamer fun, like little references and things like that. And some of them are like, genuinely sort of self-aware analysis of like what it's like to be kind of a worker bee for a big company, or what it means to sort of like have your entire livelihood sort of rely on just being kind of a cog in this giant machine. You get a lot of sort of like grief from the narrator sometimes about kind of making your own choices. And, maybe Stanley's not the smartest or the most ambitious, but you try to sort of, make choices through him as a player. And the narrator sometimes doesn't necessarily appreciate that. So yeah, I think it is a parable after all. So, maybe I'm looking a little too hard for it to mean something sometimes, but I definitely think it sort of gets into some sly, not terribly overbearing commentary on, corporate life in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's super interesting. So the fun thing about the Ultra Deluxe version is it's almost 10 years later. This game has been sort of loved and appreciated by indie gamers of all stripes for a long time now, and it has been sort of an occasion to kind of revisit the thing. And the fun thing that I sort of like about Ultra Deluxe is that it's not just like an HD version or like a polished version. It's on the Switch now, which the original game never came out for anything but Steam, I believe.
Mm-hmm. It's on a bunch of stuff now, isn't it? Like
correct. PS4? Yeah, it's Xbox and PS4 and PS5 and stuff like that too. So this is all the Ultra Deluxe version is also on Steam as well. So it's just much more available than it was 9 years ago. And it's a much bigger game. It's much more expansive. There are a lot of, the fun thing about Stanley Parable was sort of like deviating from the path, that there's a very sort of specific routine early on in a playthrough of Stanley Parable where the narrator sort of leads you, to a hallway with 2 doors in it. And then Stanley walks through the door on the left. And for a while, you're content to sort of like, just stay on that path, just, making slight choices and slight adjustments, leading to some sort of inevitable and occasionally sort of satisfying or unsatisfying ending. And then lather, rinse, repeat, back to the office, narrator starts over again. And you quickly kind of move through, the same decisions in a lot of ways that you made previously, but looking for places where you can detour, places where you can sort of take the story, take the experience down a slightly different avenue. It feels like in Ultra Deluxe that there's a lot more of those pathways.
Interesting.
I am seeing so much more stuff that I never saw in the original version of the game, which I have quite a few hours of playing. I'm not seeing some of the things that I sort of very distinctly remember from the original version of Stanley Parable. So it is a much sort of grander and a much more sprawling sort of experience. So yeah, I sort of like that. In a lot of ways, this could have very well have been the Stanley Parable 2.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's something that sort of in the context of the game, the narrator also has a little bit of fun with. I won't spoil anything there because this is still to be experienced. But it's definitely, to me, it feels like this could have been a whole separate. I mean, it is kind of a whole separate thing, right? It's the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, but this could have very well have been the Stanley Parable 2 and could have justified its sort of existence based on that. But it's sort of interesting that the developers and the writer here have made the choice to sort of entertain the potential or the possibility of creating a sequel sort of under the hood of and kind of packed into the original Stanley Parable experience.
Mm-hmm. So when you say stuff that is missing that you remember from the first one, is that just like branches that don't seem to be there?
I don't know if it's necessarily missing or if I've just not found it yet.
Okay.
You know, because a lot of those things are you making sort of detours along the pathway that the narrator's trying to sort of lead you through. And you get sort of inevitably, you get kind of a good ending. That is sort of like, you know, if you do everything the narrator says, it takes you to a certain sort of resolution. And then from that point forward, I, as a player, look for places to get off the highway, right? Places to sort of like step away from the path that he wants me to go down. And it feels like there's a lot more paths in the Ultra Deluxe version that have not led to the endings that I remember from the original version. So they may still be buried in here if I get sort of the correct combination of unexpected choices downright. Or maybe they just didn't make it to this version of the game because it's 8 years later and they decided to do something different. Who knows? But yeah, there are things that I specifically remember finding kind of at the end of playthroughs of the original Stanley Parable that don't appear to be here
in
the new version. Yeah.
It's a really interesting way of revisiting it because it was fun to have sort of that central narrative campaign, I suppose. But again, a lot of what I remember about it is sort of finishing it or getting, quote unquote, the ending, like the good ending, and then just going back and trying to discover all the little Easter eggs and side paths, essentially. So that feels like that's like the bulk of my memory of this game. So the fact that they just added more of those is pretty good.
Yeah.
Is the central storyline, is it largely the same as the original?
I think so. It feels like it is. And again, it's been, 9 years since I played the Stanley Parable. So, it does all the things that I sort of remember the story and the character doing. But on top of that, it does, like 12 new things that I didn't remember from the original version that must be new to this Ultra Deluxe version.
Yeah. Would you say this replaces the original?
I think I could probably safely say that. Listen, if you are a gamer who only consumes games on the Nintendo Switch or on the PlayStation 5.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and you've never played the Stanley Parable anywhere before because you don't play computer games or you didn't care 8 years ago or 9 years ago or whatever. There's got to be a whole sort of generation of gamer who's just hearing about the Stanley Parable for the first time, right?
Yeah.
I think this is a really good way to play it. I think you sort of get the satisfaction of experiencing kind of the vanilla, the original Stanley Parable, with a bunch of other cool stuff kind of added to it. And not in a way that sort of feels bloated or other or in addition to the original mission of the thing. It absolutely feels like kind of an expansion on what these developers were trying to sort of achieve 9 years ago with the Stanley Parable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you would think that, 9 years of thinking about this game, right? If you made the original Stanley Parable and you were like, geez, what if I went back to it? What else would I do? What else could I do with technology at this point or with the way that storytelling works in video games at this point? It's a bit of an indulgence, I think, of that. If you had the opportunity to sort of reconsider something you put into the world 8 years ago, how would you reconsider it? So yeah, it still feels kind of as satisfying as the original Stanley Parable did. And I'm still sort of sniffing around secrets, and I've put quite a few hours into this new version of it, and I keep getting endings and finding rooms and things that I didn't find before. Yeah, it's very cool. I think they've done a pretty admirable job at this. So I feel safe saying, if you don't have access to the original version of the Stanley Parable from 9 years ago, just play the new version.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. On top of that, though, if you played the original and you're curious, is there enough here to justify spending $20 or $30 on it again? I'm here to say yes, I believe there is.
Oh yeah, based on what I've heard, that sounds about right. I mean, it's also like the Stanley Parable is such a unique thing. It's like you might as well go play it again. It's worth the time to revisit.
I agree. It is. Yeah, I think a lot of video games have sort of experimented. I think we talked a bit about it last week about sort of the burning orphanage conundrum, about paradox and choice in video games and how video games sort of handle that and how it sort of leads you down pretty binary paths. And those things are generally sort of heavy-handed in video games. For those who didn't hear last week's episode, the choice was: do you save the children at the burning orphanage or do you let it burn to the ground? Yeah. And the Stanley Parable is much slyer, I think, and much more gray about those things. And you're left to sort of wonder, is Stanley's, humdrum and middling life admirable, or should he be seeking escape? Should he look for a way to sort of get off the path? Mm-hmm. I think there's some heavy stuff I think happening here with choice in the way that video games sort of handle those things. That is really interesting and kind of worth exploring. And it's disappointing that more games don't, I guess, do that.
Yeah, I was trying to think, like, this felt like such a refreshing thing to come out when it did, because we're kind of in the middle. A lot of games were still doing, like, like, is racism bad kind of decisions in games? And then this one came out, and it just felt like the next level of sort of thought around, like, decision-making.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that it comes from a writer's perspective. I think the lead architect of this is Davey Wreden, who has also gone on to make another game that I know that you and I sort of like called The Beginner's Guide, which I would also recommend.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, it does not have an Ultra Deluxe version, but if you have Steam and probably itch, definitely look up The Beginner's Guide if you like the Stanley Parable or intrigued at least by this. So I feel like this is a thing that very much sort of started with him writing this story, with sort of exploring Stanley and exploring these pathways, and then sort of building from there into, video game conceits and how to sort of gamify it to a certain degree. It's very sort of interesting to sort of see the opening credits of the Stanley Parable and see kind of written by as the headline. It's definitely, I don't know, how many people does it take to sort of write an Assassin's Creed game? An army of 25, right? Mm-hmm. Have cobbled together some sort of like mediocre script. And this very much sort of feels like kind of the pure distillation of this sort of writer and creative vision.
Yeah. This one, I mean, I think more so in The Beginner's Guide. That was, I mean, that game was also many things.
Yeah, but this is true. Yeah.
It was surprisingly personal. Like the more you get into it, you're just like, oh, this is it's coming from a very genuine place, this game, which is also just very unusual and unexpected, even as like the follow-up to something as unusual as the Stanley Parable.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely. I think maybe I need to go back to The Beginner's Guide. It's been a while since I've played that as well.
Yeah. I think it's,
Does that have a 5-year achievement? We might have to revisit both of these. Yeah.
But who knows? Yeah. I was mainly curious about sort of like how this worked as a remake, although I realize that it doesn't say it's like a remake or anything. It's like the deluxe edition. I'm not sure exactly what that means at this point.
Yeah.
But like, if you remember before the original came out, they released that demo, which was like, didn't really have a lot to do with the actual game. It kind of lined up thematically. Yeah. But it wasn't like a piece of the final game. It wasn't even really like a direct lead into it, but it was just sort of like a similar, it was like an experience to prepare you for playing Stanley Parable when it came out a few weeks later.
Right, but was, to your point, was not a slice of the main game. It sort of was a standalone other thing.
Yeah, which I thought was, just so fitting for this. But it also created this weird situation where you would recommend people play this game, and then also say like, oh, but also like play the demo before because it's just a different thing. Yeah. So I thought by releasing this Ultra Deluxe version, I just thought, okay, so what does this mean? Like, is this going to supplant the original version, or it seemed like a great opportunity for them to create yet another thing which sort of lives separately from the Stanley Parable and is maybe similar in the way that the demo is similar to the Stanley Parable, but...
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Is, just kind of a third distinct thing. But it sounds like it's not exactly what happened.
For me to explore that on the show would be massively spoilery.
Yeah, we're getting into spoilers. Okay, so...
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. I think, yes, it's interesting to sort of think of it that way and to think that there are sort of these three sort of distinct Stanley Parable things out in the universe. Because Ultra Deluxe, while sort of including the vanilla Stanley Parable experience, is very much another thing. And it is sort of in the context of it sort of self-aware of that. So that probably sounds like nonsense if you've not played this.
I mean, I can imagine... I'm sure the narrator in this just refers to this as the Ultra Deluxe version multiple times. That just I would expect that at this point.
Yes, that and so much more. So it's again, if you think you know Stanley Parable, it just seems like a very sort of obvious and cliched sort of way to get you to buy the new version of this thing, but. It is a very, very expansive sort of reconsideration of the Stanley Parable, and I found it very satisfying. I continuously want to kind of go back to it and I didn't see that room before. I didn't go through that door before. I don't remember getting that chunk of dialogue before. So I just I want to kind of like stress test it and see like how many ways can I kind of break the path of Stanley. Yeah. And what does that sort of do to the narrator's sort of like perception of me and sort of his version of how this playthrough of the game is supposed to play out? Yeah, it's just such a very unique experience that to try to sort of describe it astutely is a challenge.
I think the more you describe it, you start to sort of take away from the surprise and just the weirdness of everything.
Yeah, very much so.
And I mean, not even that, but it's just. It's hard to describe in a way that is like doing whoever you're describing it to a service. I think it's worth just experiencing, personally.
Take a couple hours of your life and just put this thing on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because like when I saw that they were coming out with this, I just thought, oh, I mean, it's cool that it's coming out on other stuff, but like I already played this thing. Do I need to play it again? Yeah. But just because I sort of understand the nature of the Stanley Parable, I almost feel like, oh, I played the original, but now that there's this, I guess there's more of it. Or like I didn't actually finish playing the original because they just hadn't finished making it.
I think that's probably
like I should probably do it.
Unique way of looking at it as well. Yeah. Yeah. Because it very much sort of starts in the same place that, the Stanley Parable did. Mm-hmm. But it goes a lot of other places. So this has been very cool. When again, like you, I think I thought I had heard that they were making a sequel, and I'm like, oh, what a cool opportunity to sort of like to replay this, right? I have this game. I liked this game. I have fond memories of it. This would be a good opportunity to just sort of like fire it up again. But yeah, this is. I'm gonna stop now. So much more than just replaying a video game. I thought I knew. It's it's very cool. Cool. I hope it sells a bajillion copies.
I hope so. I mean, it's got on the Switch, so that should take care of that, hopefully.
Yeah, that'll help, yeah. I want the Stanley Parable Super Ultra Deluxe.
Like 10 years from now, there's just 10 more hours of this game.
So like DJ said, this is out on just about everything. If it runs video games at this point, you can probably get the Stanley Parable on it, which is very cool. It probably goes without saying, but would recommend.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to squeeze this into my schedule somewhere.
Cool. So, yeah, I'm going to keep going back to it. I definitely, I know I've not seen everything that's in this game, despite sort of having put many hours into it. So, I definitely want to keep poking at it.
I definitely did not see every single thing that was possible to do in the
we just found one where you and I had two different experiences playing the original version of this game. So, the Minecraft ending, yeah.
Yeah, well, I can't remember because, I mean, you say that, and I was like, oh, sure, I can 100% imagine that happening, and I'm pretty sure I didn't experience it, but maybe I did. Like, maybe there was just so much weird stuff happening that I just threw it into the same pile. It's like, yep, that was another weird ending that I experienced in that game. Of course, there was a
that really happened.
Ending.
Yeah. You know what? I'm finding that I'm getting a lot of reflections of as I sort of am revisiting the Stanley Parable now. Is it feels like being stuck at Aperture Science in the Portal games, which, again, I think if you sort of take the perspective of that game, kind of a bit of a cog, you're a test subject in that game, in this giant sort of menacing corporate machine, and you're looking for kind of a way out. One, because you're trapped, sort of held against your will in Portal. And it's a little different, obviously, that Stanley is sort of a willing participant in this, but I think motivations and environment are pretty similar. So, again, for gamers, if you like the sort of humorously menacing tone of the Portal games, of being stuck inside, particularly Portal 2, where you really got sort of a big, expansive look at life at Aperture Science, there's definitely sort of a similar tone here that I didn't catch 9 years ago, but I'm very aware of now.
Is the narrator in this especially menacing? I don't remember him being that menacing.
Yeah, I think he's pretty menacing. I think this, I don't know that I can sort of fully explore it on the show, but
okay,
yeah.
I mean, that's fine. Don't give anything away. I just thought
he very much wants you to be compliant. He doesn't want you to mess with his story, and I think the more you sort of mess with it, the less he likes it.
Okay, well,
yeah, and I remember that sort of tone existing in the original version of this game.
I mean, I can imagine it, but overall, I didn't think of him as particularly menacing.
Yeah.
But I could just be remembering it wrong.
Yeah. The narrator is great. His name is Kevin Brighting. I don't know anything about him other than the Stanley Parable. I suspect should be a very well-regarded actor and voice actor. But yeah, he's awesome in the Stanley Parable. He's one of the few voices you actually hear in the game. And really, it just has thousands of lines of dialogue and really owns this role. So he's... appropriately enough, he gets third billing at the top of the credits and should have it, I think. Absolutely.
Yeah. Did they have him record everything again for this one? Does he sound like 10 years older?
I don't know. Maybe I would have to go back and play I still have the original version of it on Steam. I've not updated that to the Ultra Deluxe. I may want to go back and listen if he sounds 10 years older and wiser.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this thing up, I think. Anything else you want to talk about? Anything else on your mind, DJ?
You want to talk about Star Wars some more?
I think I have exhausted all of my Star Wars wisdom. I have no more for you.
Yeah, no, I think I'm good.
Okay.
It just it got to the point where I forget that I like those first three movies. There's just so much weird other Star Wars stuff flying around at this point.
Yeah. There's a lot of baggage there.
Yeah,
years and years and years of baggage. Yeah. I condescend to Star Wars, but I enjoyed those first three movies as well. I saw them all in theaters. It was definitely a big family thing when Jedi came out. My whole crew, my stepdad, my mom, my brother, we all went to see Star Wars. So yeah, it was definitely a thing when I was a kid. It just has not aged super gracefully, unfortunately.
What, the first three? Those are fine.
No. I mean, sort of the myriad versions of Star Wars that have come since.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Man, I was shocked when I found out people don't even like the third one. I was like, the third one's pretty good, isn't it? I thought everybody liked all of those. Maybe not.
Jedi? Is that the one you mean by the third one?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That was always my favorite. I thought that was the good one.
Oh, really? Yeah. I wasn't a fan of the Ewoks, but it was fine. Come on, guys. Everybody's super harsh on that one now.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Anyway,
May
sorry, I crammed
4th.
in more Star Wars chat.
You did. You found a way.
Wasn't planning to.
If you need any more video game hangover or random Star Wars trivia in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about the episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to join us on Discord. You can hang out with us and chat about video games and a bunch of other fun stuff.
Got a little Star Wars channel you can hang out in. We don't actually have that, so
no,
we don't get thumbs up.
Oh, you could talk about Star Wars in the Animal Crossing channel at this point because we're not really using it for anything.
The space for rent.
Correct. What is the next thing? You can get a link to all of that at VGHangover.com. Come hang out with us. That'd be great. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. That list continues to grow. And help us out. Do us a solid. Tell your friends about the show.
Yeah. I'm sure there is just a complete lack of Star Wars podcasts out there, so all your Star Wars fanatic friends are just looking for something to listen to. Maybe point them towards old Video Game Hangover this week. Got the Star Wars content they crave.
Right. The internet's only Star Wars podcast.
Right. Yeah, let's put that on there. Oh, man. We want to give thanks again to Protodome this week for our intro and outro music. It would be great if you headed over to protodome.bandcamp.com, bought a few albums or two, and wait, what's that I hear? Is it Bandcamp Friday this week?
It is Bandcamp Friday. It's funny you should mention that.
Oh, amazing. So while you're there, just click every single box, just buy every album that's on there, and all of your proceeds will go to Protodome. Yeah.
If you need other cool things that you should look for and perhaps support on Bandcamp, join our Discord. We have a VGM channel, a video game music channel, where we have tons of cool little links and references, and we'd be happy to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Have a good week. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.